Alright, here at Cooper Road Mini, we're getting ready to wrap up the work that we're doing on this very nice Mark II 1968. This one probably started out life as a 998 Cooper. And it's got the nicer gauges and the chrome trim on the inside. And of course it's been completely rebuilt, and so it's basically a 200-mile-old car at this point. Let's talk about several things that are relevant here, current topics. We sort of showed the beginning of dialing in this clutch linkage, and we have done so. We can see here that I just found a little L bracket. I am in favor of using the a nylock type grade 8 bolt there in place of the clevis pin. No overriding reason. It just lets you hold whatever bracketry you're using for your spring a little bit steadier and doesn't rely on the tension you can happen to set with a cotter pin. In this case, you can see we're just running the spring up to the dog bone, the engine stabilizer strut. You can see right there. Normally there'd be a little eyelet over the bleeder screw right down there of the slave cylinder. And incidentally, good time to point out once again, when you have a slave cylinder up here, this is the pre-Verto clutch. This was used till about 1980-82, depending on the type of Mini exactly. A lot of cars, of course, have been upgraded to later engines, and we'll have the tiny short Verto arm. The slave cylinder mounts on a bracket down here, and a little small arm operates down here. The clutch does take a lot more travel than this one. You can see here we don't have the limit nuts on here. I may go ahead and put them on. I'm rethinking telling the general public to not use those. If you know what you're doing and you pay attention to the linkage, you'll never hurt the engine, but it is possible if you've got some other issues and you sort of chase your tail by continuing to extend the push rod here. Not to mention any names, Todd, but if you keep kind of chasing your clutch travel by making this longer, eventually you could put too much pressure on the crankshaft thrusts, because basically you press on that clutch, you're pushing on the crank ultimately, because that's what the clutch is attached to. But anyway, in this discussion here, what we did is we made sure that we have just a little bit of free play at this stop bolt here. Now the Vertos won't have this bolt; they're a different design. But a tiny bit of free play here. Let me show it. You can literally put your hand on the arm, push it out a bit, and we pick up a little bit of, this one's not clicking, but it is, trust me, when I put a little bit of finger pressure on it, you can see it open up there, probably 10 or 15 thousandths. That's all we need to keep the throw-out bearing off the spinning flywheel assembly, and you'll live happily ever after with your clutch if you just dial in a few simple things. Do use a return spring. You need that off the throw-out bearing. A couple more things on this we can look at. This has an alternator conversion, and this is what a pre-A plus looks like. Your bosses for mounting the alternator or generator are way back here, the length of a generator. Alternators are shorter. A plus blocks have these bosses here cast over here at the length of the alternator. Another thing, of course, this is a 25D distributor with vacuum. If your distributor has one of these clamps, it is a pre-A plus block. Could be a Cooper S block going back to the 60s, but for the most part, that tells you it's a pre-A plus. There's some other subtle differences. There's some ribbing on here on the later A pluses, but these are definitive ways to tell what you have right there and right here with this bracket. If you got one of these brackets, the car came with a generator originally, and it's been converted to the shorter alternator right over here. Let's talk about these fans real quick. Our friend from the Mini Mania message board, whom I affectionately call the Lobster. The way these work, this is on the right way. Here I am standing in front of the car. You can see how this blade is cupped a little bit. Here's my hand. It's cupped like that, pointing to the radiator. This turns from this vantage point counterclockwise. Yes, if I stand over here, now the fan turns clockwise, but I can't really see the fan here. When I move over to this side, from this vantage point, now it's turning counterclockwise, but who cares? It turns the way the engine turns. If you put it on upside down, it's still going to have the same shape, but this airfoil, this curvature of the blade, is wrong on yours, for example. When this is cupped like that, the air turning, the blades, I can explain it this way, the blades grab a bigger handful of air, the direction it's going, shoves it through the radiator. If you want to back up and do a more technical airfoil explanation, As this blade with that shape moves through the air that way, the air is split. It takes the air. This is a further path to travel to go around this blade on the outside of the curve than it is on the inside. That creates a low pressure area on that side, hence you have airflow going through the radiator. Either way, this way, you'll flow a lot more air. Alright, what else can we say here? This particular one is set up with the Weber DGV, long proven progressive two-barrel, meaning when you step on the throttle, first the smaller venturi opens, then the second one, progressive linkage. Works pretty well. It has an accelerator pump. People like that. Some people prefer it over the SU type, which is a slide vacuum system. We did some dialing in here. The cables were stiff. It wasn't operating very well. The carburetor was very dry, so we put some assembly lube here and there. I sort of released this cable. I'm not a huge fan of forcing cables to go where everything looks lovely. Sometimes you end up putting too much bend into a cable, making it stiff to operate, and that's kind of a pain to chase. So the only other thing I was going to show quickly, we always talk about identifying the age of these cars. This is a 1968 Mark II Mini. Back here, if we look very carefully, let's see if we can focus it. That says 25/8. Week 25, 1968. Now that number can be anywhere. Oftentimes it's up here. On my Mini, it's up on this ledge. I've seen it a 4-digit number. This one's kind of unusual, 3-digit, but still agrees with the registration. We've got the Mark II tail lamps. No big rectangular reverse. This was up until about 69. No, make that the Mark, goes up to the Mark III, so 1975. 76 and later, Mark IV, bigger lamps. What was the other thing we were going to say back here? Of course, external hinges, sliding windows. External door hinges, sliding windows, Mark I and II feature. This being a Mark II, only 1968 and 69 for the most part, before the Mark III in 1970. There we have it, a lovely example, 1968 Mark II Mini, restored to a very nice condition. A big 1275, probably. This is the 1345, I think. And a great running car. Should be very enjoyable for its new owners.